Sarah arrived at the park to find the playground completely destroyed. No swings, no slides, just rubble. No warning, no explanation, just a cold, for safety reasons. What happened next will shock even the most hardened fighters for justice. But let's start from the very beginning. It was a bright Saturday morning when Sarah Miller, holding the hands of her two young children, walked into the neighborhood park expecting the usual Saturday routine. The sun cast a warm glow over the green grass, and the laughter of children filled the air. At least, it used to. But as Sarah approached, her heart sank. The playground, the one with the vibrant red slide and swings that had been a source of joy for her kids, was gone. In its place, a barren patch of dirt remained, littered with broken pieces of wood and shattered plastic. The swings, which her children had spent countless hours on, were reduced to nothing but metal frames scattered across the ground. The colorful slide her son used to race down, now just a pile of debris. Standing there, unable to comprehend what she was seeing, Sarah noticed a small laminated sign posted nearby. It read, "Playground closed, for safety reasons, HOA." The words felt like a slap in the face. No warning, no discussion. The community she had been a part of for years, where she had watched her children grow, had taken away a vital piece of it without so much as a word to the families who used it every day. Sarah's chest tightened as she tried to process what had happened. The HOA had bulldozed the entire playground overnight, citing some vague regulation about outdated equipment not meeting modern standards. It was absurd. She knew the truth. It wasn't about safety. It was about convenience, control, and apathy. The park had been a staple of the neighborhood for as long as she could remember. Children of all ages had built memories there, and now it was gone, as though they had never mattered. She glanced down at her children, their eyes wide with confusion and sadness. Her daughter clutched her favorite doll tightly, while her son stood frozen, staring at the remains of the playground. Sarah didn't know what to say. How do you explain this kind of loss to children? This wasn't just a park. It was their sanctuary, their escape, and now it was reduced to rubble. The decision to tear down the playground hit the entire neighborhood like a punch to the gut. For years, that small park had been a refuge for parents and children alike, a place where families could escape the pressures of everyday life. Now, it was nothing but a memory. And Sarah was not the only one feeling the loss. Every family who had spent hours there, watching their kids laugh, run, and play, shared her anger. But when Sarah tried to voice her frustration to the HOA, it only made things worse. The more she pushed for answers, the more evasive and infuriating the responses became. The board hid behind their regulations, rules that no one seemed to fully understand, and acted as though the families were nothing more than an afterthought. Each attempt at a peaceful resolution was met with dismissive replies, as though they were too busy or too important to care. The letters she sent, filled with hope for a compromise, were answered with cold, bureaucratic responses that dripped with indifference. The phone calls were even worse. Sarah could hear the condescension in the voices of the HOA board members, each one more detached from the realities of family life than the last. To them, this was just another technicality to be handled, another piece of red tape to cut through. But to Sarah, and every other parent in the community, it was far more than that. It was the heart of their neighborhood, and it had been ripped out without a second thought. As Sarah stood at the edge of the empty lot where the playground had once stood, she felt a fierce fire ignite within her. This wasn't just about a playground. It was about her children's right to have a safe space to play, to grow, and to make memories. It was about standing up against the apathy of people who had no idea what it was like to raise a family in a world that seemed increasingly determined to take away every small joy. The more she thought about it, the more her resentment grew. She couldn't just sit back and let them win. She couldn't let them erase the place where her children had laughed, learned, and played. This fight was about more than a park. It was about fighting for what her family and every family deserved. Sarah wasn't about to let this go. Determined to fight back, she contacted a lawyer, hoping that somehow someone would understand the injustice. But when the lawyer laid out the reality of the situation, her stomach sank. The HOA was a powerful force, armed with money, influence, and a team of top-tier legal professionals. Taking them on, he warned, would be an uphill battle, a fight that would drain her resources and time. But Sarah's resolve only hardened. She wasn't fighting for herself. She was fighting for every family in the community who had been wronged. She had to do something. So, Sarah got to work. She rallied the neighbors, one by one, parents who had spent countless afternoons watching their children play and grow in that park joined her cause. They organized meetings, spread the word, and within days, the petition was flooded with signatures. Their message was clear. The community would not be silenced. The people who had been most affected would now make their voices heard, loudly and without hesitation. The court case that followed was a brutal, drawn-out affair. Every day, Sarah stepped into that courtroom with one purpose: to fight for what was right. The HOA's lawyers were ruthless, using every legal tactic at their disposal to make the case as difficult as possible. Sarah felt the weight of each objection, each delay. It seemed like the more she pushed, the stronger they fought back. But she wasn't giving up. As the case wore on, something unexpected happened. Her lawyer, digging deep into the HOA laws, discovered a hidden loophole, an obscure clause that could force the HOA to rebuild the playground, but this time with stricter safety standards in place. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Then the turning point came. The judge, who had seen the outpouring of support from the community, was moved by the overwhelming evidence of how important the playground had been. He issued a rare court order, one that compelled the HOA to pay for the construction of a new, safer, and better playground, a decision that shook the board to its core. It wasn't just a win for Sarah. It was a win for every parent who had stood by her. And more than that, it was a win for the entire community. The day the new playground was revealed to the community was a day Sarah would never forget. The children, faces full of joy, ran toward the new slides and swings, their laughter filling the air. But Sarah's heart swelled with pride for another reason. It wasn't just about the playground. It was about justice being served. The HOA had been forced to face the consequences of their careless actions. In the end, it wasn't just about a park. It was about standing up against injustice, no matter how powerful the opponent seemed. Sarah had fought for her kids, and she'd won. And that feeling of triumph, knowing that their voices had been heard, was priceless.